The content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe space to express thoughts, ideas, and information. The views and opinions expressed by individuals in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of every speaker of the IMEC organization or its affiliates. P.S. The Mandela effect is real. Ladies and gentlemen, coming up, we have the IMEC ladies, or the IMEC view. So far, we have Miss Regina Meredith, it looks like, has joined us. She may be a little sidetracked at the moment here. We've got Jan Engels-Smith. Are you there with us, Miss Jan?
Yes.
Wonderful. Glad to have you here. We're waiting on a couple more ladies to pop in and join us here, and we will be ready to go. What are your thoughts on this conference so far, Miss Smith?
I think it's fabulous. I think that what I'm noticing is that these are some of the most open-minded, kind people that I think makes the world. I don't know if you can hear the coyotes. Can you hear the coyotes right now? They just started screaming outside my window. But anyway, I just think that it's amazing, and I hope that more and more people just quit doubting and just get on board with it. I think their lives will change beautifully when they open up to what all these people are saying. And I hear a common theme of stay positive, stay open, and expect the best. So.
Excellent. Well, it looks like the rest of the ladies have started to trickle in. I'm going to go ahead and turn this session over to our amazing moderator for this session, Miss Cynthia Sue Larson. Cynthia, can you hear me? Cynthia, you're muted.
Thank you. One more little glitch. Okay. Yes, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. We've also got Eileen tag along for the ride and Miss Regina Meredith. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dark Wolf, and these are the ladies of IMEC, and I am going to disappear. Bye, everybody. Enjoy.
Bye. Thank you so much. So, hello, ladies, and I'm glad to be your moderator for this episode of the IMEC View. I have to disclose that I'm not actually a regular watcher of the typical program, The View, so this will be our own version anyway. And I think it's a really special opportunity for those of us who are able to be here. I see Regina's here. Thank you. And we've got Jan Engels-Smith here, Eileen Colts, and myself. We're also expecting, I think I saw Nicole DeMario show up briefly, so maybe she'll be back. Anyway, we'll go ahead and start off. I know that Kimberly Lynn Hansen wanted to be with us. And for those of you that missed her poem, she ran a poem just a moment ago. It started off, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. And she says, I shook my mother awake. I said, come look, we've got presents. She followed, and I presented the paintings that God made for us. As she returned to bed, Mom hugged me and told me they were just shadows. Because what she'd seen were these shadows in the hallways. But what's so beautiful about this poem is she says, adults' hearts can forget what a child's heart already knew. And Kimberly adds, she wanted there to be undeniable proof. This is art, and that art is the truth. So, and then it repeated, but it was such a beautiful piece. I'd like to open with that, ladies, and we'll move on to the Mandela effect. But I know that this process of looking at the truth, some of us have touched on that. A lot of us want to know the truth once we encounter the Mandela effect. And then, of course, with shadows, what comes to mind? So I'll just open it up if anybody would like to pick this up. And Regina, you're here, so I'd love to, of course, hear from you again.
Thank you so much. Hi, I'm in my Airstream, I'm at a little
Nice.
park in Moss Landing, California, just about 10 miles from Monterey. It's wonderfully chilly here. It's been so hot at home. We had to get out of there, 100 degrees, too hot. So here we are. And so the thing is, we've been on the road, family, camping, doing all this. And so I'm really going to ask a lot of questions today and find out what were the most profound moments in each of your minds of what came out of the conversations. But what I want to say about that poem that's so beautiful is the primary difference between us as adults and us as children, other than all of the trauma that's happened over the lifetime, to essentially help us, put us in a state of guarding ourselves, is we no longer live in the moment. I'm really, I really kind of preach that one quite a bit, of having the opportunity to be in the moment puts you back in that childlike state, because everything's happening right now and now and now. And I thought that was really beautiful about when she was talking about the childlike part in the shadows, and allowing ourselves to just dial into what's happening in this very moment right now, excluding every other moment before or after, I think is the closest we can do to go back into that place of innocence. So just opening, I think that's one comment. And also with the Mandela effect, being in the now gives us an opportunity to notice when these things are happening, if we're not rushing past our present moment so rapidly. But anyway, I'd like to turn it over. Thank you for inviting me to be among the women. And on The View, there always has to be a skeptic. You have a conservative, you have a comedian, and then you have the uber liberals. So everybody choose their place.
Yeah, pick your roles, ladies.
Yeah, pick your role. But I would really like to find out from everyone else the most profound moments that occurred during the conference for each person, where there was a kind of an aha moment.
Sure, let's go around. You can riff off the poem, talk about your profound moment. So, Jan, if you want to go first, you could, because you gave your talk. You just gave your talk.
Yeah.
It was
and
wonderful.
I didn't get to hear it. I've been in an RV shower. I didn't get to hear your talk. I've been literally engaged this whole time. I want to hear about it.
Well, let me first address Cynthia's question. What I hear in that poem is the difference between looking at things with child's eyes and then an adult eyes. The child sees the painting, the adult sees the shadows. And in my talk, I really talked about right brain. And the right brain is a magical place of creation and imagination and living, as Regina just said, in the moment. But there doesn't have to be a reason for anything. Right. It doesn't have to be figured out and analyzed and made into logical sense. And so the children see it that way. And that's, to me, the most beautiful part of this in that poem is, look at how they see life, and then look at how an adult sees life. So.
That's so pretty and beautiful, actually. And I think you capture some of that childlike feeling, that quality. You seem to keep it, Jan. So I really love that about you.
Well, I definitely live in the magic, that's for sure. And then I'll let people, as far as the most profound moment, I think I'm still really in a place of processing, but I would pull from everybody's talk that I love to learn things, and I love to be sort of presented with a wow. And I would say that every presenter presented me with wow, where I went, oh, that is so cool that that's the way that they're perceiving things, because it's all perception, and it's how you decide to look at life and look at your experiences, how you relate to them. And I have been wowed by everybody in facts and in experiences. So
thank you. That's so awesome. So let's go to someone else, and you can jump in. It looks like got 3 other people that haven't been heard from. So why don't we start with,
if we're doing it the View style, we can talk over each other.
Oh, perfect. You're right.
And the louder the better.
Just jump in. Everybody jump in.
Yeah, especially if you know your role. So go ahead and say what your role is. Like, hey, I'm a skeptic.
I'll be ultra liberal with a shamanic.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in? Grab your roll.
It's been amazing over the days, starting on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. What are we today? Wednesday? I'm losing
Wednesday.
track of days. They're
It's
all
Wednesday.
they're all merging, they're all converging, to hear so many different viewpoints and areas of expertise that all relate back to the Mandela effect, whether it's about consciousness expanding or alternate personalities in people, or touching into your heart-driven desires and purpose and all of that. It all seems to kind of point back to the Mandela effect and how that's such a great awakening for many people. The Mandela effect is a bit of a shock, and then they're wide awake and they're going, what the heck is going on? My world is changing around me. And I think that kind of leads them into all these different areas that were covered and that are still being covered this whole week.
Yeah. And any thoughts on the poem? Get a shot at that one before we forget what it's about.
Well, I'm on Lauren's timeline, and I missed the poem too because I had a technical problem.
Should we read
So-
it again?
How long
Is
was
it possible? Is it
Yeah.
possible to read it?
Yeah, it won't be Kimberly reading it. It's me. It starts off, it's so beautiful because her voice, it's 4:00 in the morning. It's 4:00 in the morning. I shook her awake. It's my mother. I said, come look. We've got presents. And she followed after it took her a while to wake up. And I presented the paintings God made for us. As she returned to bed, Mom hugged me to tell me they were just shadows. And adults' hearts can forget what a child's heart already knew. And I wanted there to be undeniable proof that this is art. And that art is the truth. Those are my notes. It's not exactly. So it's my interpretation of Kimberly's poem.
That's beautiful. I'm so glad you read it again. And I'm going to go back and hear Kimberly Hansen read it as well.
Oh, yeah.
I just get this feeling like when you're talking about childhood, the innocence of it. And then when you're talking about the truth in art, it's like, who better to see the truth in anything than a child's viewpoint? And if we as adults can kind of like shake out all of that formal learning and take that on board to make us stronger, smarter, whatever, but to see everything with the eyes of a child, it would only benefit us. It would just help us, and it would probably help the world too.
Yeah. I love that beginner's mind, just like no expectation. You can see all kinds of miraculous, amazing stuff, because you don't know that you can't.
That's a good point. You don't know that you can't.
Yeah.
You haven't been taught yet.
Yeah. And then what education does and what society does and the way our band of perception is completely narrowed to a point as we go through life and become actually more exposed, better educated, the further away we seem to move from the organic nature of what we perceive as God's painting of beauty, right? And I remember thinking this when I hit my 20s or so, and I had a subscription, this was some years later to New Yorker magazine, but also all the various news magazines, even in my youth, and then traveled. And I remember going to the Tate Museum in London, for example, and they would put these abstract, not just abstract pieces of art, but oftentimes pieces of art that were totally incongruent and to me very out of sync. And my whole body felt offended looking at certain pieces of art because the child in me could not see the beauty in it. I just couldn't see the beauty. It was like, what's going on? So of course I assumed that I am not well educated enough in art. There's something wrong with my perceptions. I'm not sophisticated enough, that I didn't get it. And I started realizing, no, it's not that I didn't get it. The child in me recognizes what my being perceives as beauty, coherence, sometimes symmetry, sometimes asymmetry. And the child is still experiencing all of that. And the child in us knows that. But how many times have we given way to someone else's adult professional perception, whether it has to do with art, health and well-being, and so forth, right?
Right.
So true. Yeah.
You know, I was wishing I'd have something profound happen, so I went to water my plants on the break today, and you won't believe it. There's a plant I've planted, a summer squash, and I put a little protective cage around it so that the varmints don't get it. We've got skunks, raccoons, squirrels, deer, everything. Anyway, I've been wishing that I needed to. I said, when I've got time, I'll need to move the stakes and move this whole contraption over because the plant is growing differently than I had placed the structure, and I wanted the leaves to have more room. So I went out to water it today, and guess what? The plant has moved. The plant has moved. It's like the stake and the cage is in the same place. The plant is like 6 inches to the left.
Maybe
You
maybe
wanted
the earth moved and the plant fell in the right spot. That's what happened to me.
I'm
It's
sorry, what?
cooperating. The plan is showing that basically life likes to cooperate here in 3D.
You know what else? And you know what else? Today is the International Day of the Fairy. And I talk to the fairies when I'm in the garden. So
Lovely.
who knows? I mean, I don't know. This is really interesting.
Or to have a fairy garden. My grandson and I just made a new fairy garden the other day, and
Ah,
Right.
he's all into it.
very cool. So
Yeah.
It does illustrate. You talk a lot about how the universe likes goodness. The universe likes cooperation. The universe rewards cooperation. And here you are,
does.
daily like messages from things like plants that it's cooperating.
Absolutely. And it seems like we need that in this time of fragmentation and polarization. It seems like if I make the mistake to turn on the news just to see what's going on, it's like, oh my gosh, why'd I look? But then I need to find out what's going on in the consensus reality. So I do check from time to time. But that's a great point. Like, how do we deal with that? Those of us who are here, most of us are not what I'd call heavily polarized. Most of us are going to listen to someone, and we're not going to assume or judge anything about them, I hope. Except on The View, we all have these tendencies, right? We got a super liberal. Go for it.
I just
You're there,
wanted
Lauren.
to say synchronicity. I am reading a book on, it's called Pilgrimage of the Leprechauns.
Oh, wow.
It's right next to me here. I'm doing my next book club on it. But I would like to ask all of you, because elementals are said to kind of play with timelines and play with events and such. Cynthia, I know that you've had some experiences because you mentioned this to me when you were at Gaia. And unfortunately, because of COVID, we did not get to go do the story. We were going to do the Trail of the Leprechauns and trolls and fairies. We didn't get to do that. So I just thought I'm going to read the books and do a book club anyway. It makes me feel good. So I'd like to know from you about the nature of leprechauns and these elemental beings in the subject of parallel realities and time shifting and the Mandela effect.
Absolutely. They're so cool because they seem tied into the human experience, which blows my mind. That's how I found out the day before 9/11. Well, I didn't know. They didn't tell me 9/11 is coming. That's not what they said. But I was on a walk through a local park near my house called Tilden Park, which has groves of oak trees, which if you know circles of trees, if you go to England and Avebury Henge, you'll see these circles of trees, and I consider them just as important as the stones. Anyway, so I'm seeing these circles of oak trees and racing through them because I have to pick my daughters up that day. And it was September 10th, and the fairies, these are fairies, I don't know that they're elves, but they're little people. And they hang out there. There's like 2 villages of them, one under one circle of oaks, another under another circle of oaks. And the first group gave me something to read. They could see I was in a hurry and said, please, one of the tiny little elf people handed me this big scroll, handed it to me and said, please read it before you go to bed tonight. So I promised I would. And then I continued like jogging down the trail and picked up my daughters. I'd gone through a divorce. I'm a single mom, cook dinner, do homework. They go to bed. This is a long story. I'll just cut it short. But long story short, I forgot to open the scroll. So I was starting to fall asleep and I feel literally something tugging on my nightgown. Wake up like, oh, it's you. Oh my gosh, the scroll. Now this is like a third eye scroll. So it's not like anything. I'm not holding anything. So I just open it up, look at it, I transcribed it into my journal. And then the first word, they must know I love codes. So they'd written a coded message. So I'm reading this glowing words, and the first word of each sentence was in gold, and it shone. And it was a sentence. So the sentence lit up always remember that you live your life for love. I'll never forget that. And then, of course, I'm woken up again by a friend phoning before the sun really comes up here in California. The terrible tragedy is unfolding. So that was 9/11. But I've had so many experiences with the little people, so many. I mean, I want to stay focused. I'm already feeling like I'm pretty fringe as it is, so I don't go into a lot of these topics. But with you guys on The View, sure,
It's
why
safe.
not?
But you just like raised a huge elephant in the room, which we can get controversial now and talk
Let's go
about
for
it.
it.
Yeah, let's go for it, girls. And that is that within the Mandela effect community, there
Yes.
are a lot of subsets. And
Yes.
some are extremely, I would say, Christian, biblically oriented.
Yes.
And some are extremely truther oriented about the
Yes.
conspiracies, the government, 9/11, like you
Oh
said.
gosh, yes. Yes.
And some of us see orbs. Like I've
Yes.
captured loads of orbs right here in front of this antique dresser, and I just throw them up on my channel. I'm like, oh, there's another orb.
Mhm.
And some people see ghosts and talk to
Yeah.
ghosts. So I kind of want to touch on the fact that all of us here are Mandela affected, and we understand what it means to be Mandela affected, but we all have different ideas on what's causing it, where it's leading us, why it's happening, and how that's related to magical and miraculous experiences like spontaneous healing, talking to a dead relative, convening with fairies and orbs and elementals and things like that. I just kind of want to tackle the whole picture, because right now it's being dissected. Right now, as we speak, people are dissecting it into little different communities and saying,
Absolutely.
well, this is not reflecting the biblical approach to the Mandela
Right.
effect, therefore it's wrong, or
Right.
it's got magic and it's got fairies, so it's wrong.
It's wrong. Right.
It's got a round earth, so it's wrong.
Right.
But we here say we love flat earth. We love flat earthers and we love flat earth theory. I have a lot of flat earth friends, and I think they tolerate me because I'm like, hey, I don't know what shape it is. And if you want it to be flat, that's totally cool with me. So back to the question for each of you. How is this serious Mandela effect tied into all these different approaches and communities? Like, does it separate us because someone thinks it's round and someone thinks it's flat? That shouldn't separate us. And I want to hear all the answers.
I have an answer. One of the common themes that I've heard throughout this conference is a part of unity and of coming together. And there's a talk of oneness. I know some people called it love. Heather, you were talking about that illuminating feeling of bliss. And to me, we can't be in that state of vibration when you're debating or comparing and or competitive. It's when we're talking about the Mandela effect and the magic of it. It's not to say that all these other things, religions and different philosophies of the earth are wrong. If you're really in the Mandela effect, you're open to the possibility of different realities, and there's a oneness there. It's saying that there is no exact answer. There is no answer because it is everything is possible and probable, and it just means where am I going to vibrate? What am I going to tune into? And if you're in oneness, if you're in love, then you can't debate. I mean, it's an incongruent frequency. It doesn't. It means that I'm going to make you wrong so I can be right, and that is not congruent with love.
Oh, I love Eileen's point, though, because this is such a loaded topic, because when you get to the nature of everything and reality, it sort of becomes religious at that point, for a lot of people. And so it's almost like these are spiritual religious camps of a sort. I don't know that flat earth is a religion, but, it's kind of like they're proponents and they feel like they don't want to go to that oneness. You have to think this way. Yeah. And there can be cliques even within the Christian groups. There might be some Christian groups that say these are the right Christian groups. Those ones are not so good. And
I mean, I'd like to say this year I presented on the cosmos and planets and stars and galaxies based on what information is out there, instead of making it up in my own head, and then tying each one of those to the Mandela effect. So it was kind of like a puzzle and a project for me. But if I ever came back to speak, it might be on something completely different. And every one of my theories, I believe, is a theory. I don't believe I'm holding any truths that only I know or that I have to tell other people, because then in a year I'll read something, or a week, and a new theory will make me toss out my old theory. So my theories are constantly evolving, which is what Nicole was talking about, right? The evolution of thought, and not clinging to it and saying, this is my belief no matter what. I'm going to die with this belief, come hell or high water, this is my belief. It's like letting belief and thoughts evolve.
Yeah, I was thinking about, for me, this topic is, it harkens back to what Regina was talking about. It's in this moment. And when I drop into what is here now, the question isn't even relevant. None of it is, because for me, all of this is surface. It's just topical. They're human constructs. It's stories and beliefs, but none of those things are actually who we are. So it's kind of like the game that we play while we're here, but when we let go of the game and we're still in the moment, there's a recognition, for me at least, that none of it's even relevant or important. Like, we are that which is beyond all of these things, all of these beliefs and all these stories and all these acculturations. Like, we can clothe ourselves in them, but essentially they are not who we are. And I have found myself in the past where I've had these profound energetic experiences, and I can feel the mind wanting to get engaged. Like, what is that? And what energy specifically is interacting? And letting go of the need or the wanting to know and identify, and just really appreciating, thank you. Like, I don't need to know what that is unless I do. Sometimes there have been moments where I do want to know, and I allow that also, it's part of the human experience. But yes, but also the recognition is that is the mind getting engaged, and it doesn't need to be. So does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I feel much like you do, Nicole, in that my life has really been asking a lot of questions, and that's what I'm prone to naturally. So I'm kind of well situated for the job I do, but I find that it's not as though I'm looking for a pat answer on any of the subjects that I deal with, particularly in my work. I'm looking to expand thought. I'm looking to expand possibility. Maybe that's a better word for it, and waiting and see where the moments are when the fields of possibility to collapse into something that seems to be more common to people, and that in that moment, that's where I can see maybe some, if you can call truth objective anymore, where I see some kind of objective truth rising. But I feel a lot like you do, in that I don't need to know the answers to the Mandela effect, but I'm intensely curious about the possibilities of it. And I think I was talking about that, just kind of some of the basic principles of the nature of reality. I find if I can get comfortable with some basic principles, and for me the most basic principle is really, really simple, whether it's spiritual or whether it's metaphysical or physical, and that is that we're non-material beings in the most true sense of the word. There's nothing here. And because of that, everything's possible, because we I don't know if we agree on this or not, but I tend to think that mind, you can call mind anything you want from any source you want, great creative sources throughout history, throughout the cosmos, throughout the universes, that something about the creative process is the thing that programs this nothingness of us to make it take a form such as what we recognize, and take on even kind of mental, collectively agreed upon kind of mental concepts as a civilization that we can agree upon, so we can even talk to each other. But beyond that, to me, it's far more questions than answers. And that's, I think, why I'm so intrigued with the Mandela effect. And I said that in my talk. What happened even with the simple thing of a portrait of Dorian Gray? Is it a parallel reality? Is it that someone's mind rewrote the program, and it can rewrite it back because time and space isn't linear? I love all of it, and I am perfectly content, just like you, to not have any of the answers. It's funny because, honestly, discussing it with men, what's the point? If you don't know the answer, what's the point?
Well, it's just belief against belief. And if I want to know what the answer, I often will ask the question, and then I let go. And it's amazing the way that I hear that or experience that or receive that. But I let go of the needing to know or the wanting to know, and I gentle my energy. And there's kind of this trust, like I know what I know. And so letting go of that need to know, it doesn't necessarily mean I let go of the question, but I also can see the beauty of all of this surface chatter that everybody engages in. And yes, the curiosity about that. Do we do that, that engagement about defending belief? Do we do that because we're conditioned to do that? Or do we do that because we think that that's what we're supposed to do? Or do we just enjoy the battle, So, and from moment to moment, it can be different from person to person, and really honoring that each moment is fresh and each moment is new. And I love that, because if we go through each moment thinking this moment is unlike anyone that has come before, it allows so much possibility. And I love that. And, Cynthia, you were talking about checking in the news and feeling what you feel, and recognizing, like for me, and I was doing that this morning, and I could feel like this tension and being like, okay, and that already was. Like, this is something new for me. And, and what do I want to do with this new moment? And doing that and committing to that again and again and again, as often as we need to, or I need to feel good. And I just said, like, even before this call, I said, okay, give me something fun. And music starts playing, and it's like, and it was magical. And it's not even my belief system, but it was so, because I'm not Christian, but it was so beautiful and poignant, and I could absolutely appreciate that and let go of the needing to be right.
Can we talk about your belief system? Because I think it's a good opportunity. I know you don't want me to. Okay.
No, you can. I'll let you know if it's a threshold, but yeah, go ahead.
But Nicole, you've got this amazing background. I don't know if you grew up this way or if you've just become an atheist, but that's something that's pretty common now in the colleges. Like, most of the young people are atheists, but you're very unique. I know a lot of atheists. I don't know anyone else like you, Nicole. You're like one of a kind. So,
yeah, I actually grew up Catholic. That was my indoctrination. But I remember very clearly at the age of 5 thinking, what I was being taught does not make sense. Like Adam and Eve, these stories. And I thought there was just this inner knowing, like that, no. And when I was 17 in high school, I remember my mom and I kind of battling, and I said, Mom, I did some research and I looked up the origin of many of these stories, and I don't want to participate any longer. And that didn't really work for her. But I kind of just, and Eileen, we've talked about this curiosity, but also this sense of what is fundamentally true. And I've had, as I've mentioned, I've had lots of energetic experiences. I even, I went to, I would call it a metaphysical event. And I was holding space for this gate of grace. And I was shoved very powerfly. And my sternum, and I heard, pay attention. And there was this, yes, this, what is this? What is this energy? And then I was indignant. I thought, how dare you? I am sovereign in my space. You never have permission to touch me. And so, but I have asked questions like, what is that? And other times it's not important. It just is what it is. So I don't know if that answers anything. Do you have a specific question, Cynthia, or anyone else?
Well, I just wonder why atheism instead of agnosticism. That's a pretty strong statement to go all the way atheist. And we're talking about beliefs, putting it out there, talking about all these other things that people might believe in related to the Mandela effect. Do you have some kind of a connection to it through the atheism? Or?
I would just say when I've asked questions, I've said, is God, does God exist? And is it in the form that is commonly held as true or believed to be true? And what I hear as a voice speaking is, no, this is not true. This is not what the energy is. And I would have to look, because it's been a while since I've asked specifically, and I notated what it was. But I get that this sense, paraphrasing loosely, that a lot of these beliefs have been written into being, and they're not necessarily intrinsically or fundamentally true. And I've said, if it's true, reveal it to me, because I always want the fundamental truth in every situation. It's okay if it is juxtaposed to my belief, because I'm willing to let that go to have what's true and what's real. And so, but that has not been my experience. And so, I say, check me if my belief is really driving my experience. And so I guess I would say that my sense is it's more like unified field. It's not necessarily that we're pieces of consciousness, that we are consciousness and we are unified consciousness. And the only thing that changes that is perception of separation. I perceive you as separate than me. So.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
I get it. Yeah. It's funny because at first I thought, we have very different beliefs about God, Nicole. And by the end of it, I'm like, no, we have the same beliefs, but we were just using different words to get to the same place, because I started out Catholic and then I chose a Jesuit university, but I was partly raised in America and the Middle East. And as a Christian and a Catholic, it was like, whoa, there's totally different beliefs going on here in human beings. How is that possible? And then you start to find a lot of the biblical stories in the ancient Sumerian clay tablets, and you go, wow, who wrote these stories? What were they written for? And 9 times out of 10, they were written by a ruling elite to govern and slightly oppress the masses. It was like, don't expect to have food in your belly and your family's belly now. If you suffer now, you'll go to heaven and God will give you bountiful amounts of food and land and, the milk and honey, streams of milk and honey. So I found that it was to oppress people who were hurting. But having said that, gone through as many religions as I could find on the planet, round or flat, whatever you want to call it, the plane or the planet, there were so many commonalities in them. I started to realize that this is human thought. This is the human animal becoming conscious and defining God. And in the process, creating God, the way a human brain can make sense of it. Yes. So I came finally at my almost 60 years to really believe what the original Americans believe and the Aborigines, and that is that God is in everything, you know, whether it's a pebble or a cockroach, I know that sounds terrible, or a rat or a dog or a blade of grass or anything, a rock, especially human beings. Of course, you can see God in their eyes when you look at them and you look into the soul. But I just feel God is everywhere. And for me, that works. And then suddenly I'm realizing it's the same belief that you have. But for you, it's not God is everywhere. It's we are everything.
Yes.
But we wound up at the same point.
Yeah, but that's also the native belief. The native belief that you are the universe. You are the universe. Everything is happening inside of you. And so if you want to make changes on the outside, you have to change what's inside. And I have a great story about that. It's this is a true story, and it took place at Machu Picchu in Peru, and they had really bad fires down there. And so the council that runs Machu Picchu, and I actually know a couple of the members, called in shamans to put out the fires, which I love that, you know, like who are we going to call shamans? And so all these shamans came in and they started doing their, you know, drumming and dancing and, you know, singing, working with the elements, all the things that shamans do. But one of them said, I want you to build me what I call a wiki up, which is a little personal lodge that you go in and it's dark and you sit in there in the dark. And so she sat in there for about a day and a half. Fires went out. And all the other shamans knew. They knew it wasn't them that had done it. And they approached her and they said, what'd you do? How'd you put out the fires? And she said, I found where I was out of alignment within myself. And when I righted that, the external world corrected. And to me, that's the answer to everything. The outside world is a reflection of how you see it. It's your projection of what you see.
Yes.
And if you want to change something, you don't point fingers and say that their fault, their fault. You go inside and you find out where you need to right yourself. And then it shifts. And if you want to call that a Mandela effect and shifting realities, that's a good explanation. Because our reality is a projection of where we are in life. And so some people might be in bliss right now and other people might be miserable. It's all true, you know. I believe, you know, that every moment in time, every now stands by itself in a separate matrix of energy with all of its probabilities right there. And when you have those profound moments, well, every moment, I should say, you are shifting into a different dimension. Every moment, every moment, every moment. And that's why in shamanism, we can go back to any moment and do something with it. We can heal it, we can change it, we can give new endings. But beside the point, every moment is new. It's a new dimension. And so when you have those profound moments, you just move more fully into that than you would, because what happens is we move into these new moments every moment, but our memory, our mind takes us back because we're recalling, we're attached to things. We say, well, this is the way it is. And that memory just keeps us stagnant. Where if you were to stay in each moment, you're constantly moving into a new dimension and you'll see all these different things happening. So.
I agree. I agree with you, Jen. I think that the notion of never forget is one of the most damaging things we can do to ourselves and we can do to our lives. I believe exactly as you do, that memory is to concretize the past. It's to concretize one particular reality, timeline, etc. And oftentimes the things that we choose to remember we're doing for self-protection, such as never forget, so you can never be hurt again, meaning you cannot be open again, meaning you cannot allow the moment to come in and shine itself anew. And so the whole notion of time and space, well, time in particular, continuing to reflect on the past, even whether it's a beautiful moment or whether it's a traumatic moment, it was in that moment. It's left its imprint. Now let it go. And to me, let it go and let the new moment create itself. And that childlike enthusiasm and excitement and passion and desire we all have inside, that childlike part of ourselves, is that fresh part that's going to keep creating the new moments, even if they're somewhat calamitous. We have to have faith that life is here and life itself provides, and we're going to be okay. We don't have to hold on to the past. We don't have to hold on and make ourselves more cynical and more bitter in that particular timeline so that we can ensure never being hurt again. What a horrible thing to do to one's life, in my opinion. And that is one thing I'm kind of dogmatic on. There are not a lot of things I'm dogmatic on, but I'm dogmatic about clinging to the past. I just have no use for it at all. You can make a fool of yourself in doing so. I know. My father, I remember telling me at one point, he said, "Honey child, you're a slow learner."
Because I told you that, really?
I would just go
I can't believe that.
try it again.
Yeah.
Thinking whatever, feeling like there might be a different outcome against all odds. And that's part of being in the moment as an optimist too. You are bound to make a fool of yourself, but so what? I could care less. I mean, maybe I'm just at that place in life now, and from here on out, I don't care about making a fool of myself. I care that I'm showing up in the moment and being and remaining throughout my lifetime open-minded. I mean, what do we have? If we start collapsing all of this into known outcomes, you know?
Right.
Where is the joy? Where's the creativity? Where is any of the magic of life? So that's why I think, again, the Mandela effect is so fascinating to me, because it allows for all these possibilities and kind of an endless engagement with the miracle of life. And every now and then you see something and think, I'm seeing that happen again and again with different people. Interesting. Maybe we can get a little data point in this whole thing there, because that's all we're going to get. We're not figuring it out in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
I like that, Regina, like using other people's information to help you figure out what's going on, but without jumping onto it and saying, oh, that's the truth, I'm going to believe that now, or rejecting it and saying, nope, that cannot be true because I believe this. It's just like looking at what other people are experiencing and how they're experiencing it and what they're making of it. That really helps me. Like listening to you guys and always listening to Mandela Effect channels, whether I agree with them or not. I love hearing opposite perspectives.
Yes. Yeah, I want to talk about this thing from the child's point of view, because I was noticing that I couldn't play trivia games even when I was young, and people loved Trivial Pursuit. It was a big deal in the 70s. I was a complete fail at that game because I was already experiencing the Mandela effect. I could not understand how anyone could lock onto these facts and hold on to them and say I couldn't even that's the reason I wasn't tracking these things, actually, because I'd already given up on holding on to these little bits of trivial facts that may or may not be there. I find it
physics major.
That makes it difficult as a child when everything's changing.
Quantum physics is great. My brain works that way. So when I got to quantum physics at UC Berkeley, it's like, finally, it makes so much sense. And I was a little embarrassed to show them about this whole Mandela effect, reality shift thing. But my professors that I greatly adore, one of them just passed away, but he was my favorite professor. And I finally felt like, okay, I'll tell him what I'm doing. And he had the nicest things to say. So, but that was my favorite quantum physics professor at UC Berkeley. And so that, I think it makes a big difference when we are aware, like Regina said, you don't have to hold on to this stuff. I mean, if you really love it, then hold on to it maybe, but even then I'm not sure, because it's like that poem that Kimberly started us with. It's like, look at this art. And it's like shadows on the wall. That to me sounds like Plato's cave. And it's this whole reality. It reminds me of what we're hearing when Nicole is saying, like, we're not really here. It's like we are the shadows on the wall, and everything is equally permeable. You know, this week, Regina wanted to know, what are some showstopper moments? So many. I'll bring up Shane, a couple of Shanes that I like. We'll go through and just hit key points for each person. Yeah. But two of my favorites from Shane were that he was talking about how in his presentation, he's showing a video clip where he's pointing out how he'd written love on all of the geography and topography of the world, and he'd left out. So as you can see him pointing on his own video, very methodically going to every single tiny island in this little system of islands. He skipped a couple that we can clearly see right now, which indicates that even since last November, the map is different. Even since then. That was one of his second one that blew my mind today, was where he talked about how he's had a physiological shift with his ribs, had a healing, but there was like this fold of skin. The fold is still there, but his rib is now fixed. And that's like a personal Mandela effect and a global one.
Yeah, he's got proof
Mind-blowing.
on his body that it was there.
Yeah.
And I have a similar one, but I don't have the proof. I had very serious scoliosis as a child, and then it disappeared. And I was supposed to be treated with it. I wore braces like Forrest Gump from my knees to my feet when I started walking, just to make my feet turn in. So they were getting ready to treat my back, and my back was perfectly straight by the age of 12. So my mom and I are like, well, how did that happen? And the doctor went, you know what? I don't know. Sometimes it just happens. And I had a big S curve. Scoliosis is an S curve in the spine.
Yes.
So it starts out here at the neck, and then at the shoulder blades, it takes a turn and goes down. So, I mean, I don't have proof of it, but like Shane,
Yeah, she got frozen. Okay. Well, is everyone else able to speak? That's a good checkpoint. Okay. Well, she'll come back. Anybody want to add to that? That was a great moment, and then it kind of got cut off.
I really liked your because. That was really, I love the way that hit me when you separated.
I experienced like a little miracle.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a profound moment for me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Because I do think that we are causing it all. You know, we're the creators of everything. And
yeah, we've been created in the creator's image, literally. And I like the idea that Regina started off. She's the first one, being the keynote speaker. She got to go first. And she said, we are the ones we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
And then that got echoed so many times, because Evan Maitreya said that. He brought up the Hopi, had a slide about it. My slide finally popped back up again after that small glitch there. And we are the time travelers that we've been waiting for. Because I was talking about John Archibald Wheeler and the delayed choice perspective, in addition to the participatory universe, two ideas from quantum physics that we're literally witnessing in the Mandela effect. So that's something that I think is very personally meaningful to me. And
won't it be fun when the Mandela effect isn't an anomaly anymore, and it's just like the norm? That's what I think is going to happen. You know, as more and more people gather it in the collective, it will become, just normalized, and people will use it maybe more intentionally and be able to do more things with it. Especially my gig is always around healing. You know, like have an illness, then well, let's work with the version of you that's not ill and move our consciousness into that version, and then you're well, which I think is actually what happens in miraculous healings. I think that's probably what happened with Eileen. You know, there's a version of her that has scoliosis and a version of her that doesn't, and she moves somehow into that. Older philosophies, or the way I used to think, it would have been, prayer. Prayer can do that because it's a very focused intent, and it's very positive. If it's done a certain way. I don't necessarily think that anymore, because I've been so exposed to all of this. I do believe, though, that there is an intent that is needed to shift and stay there, and that's part of the formula almost for doing these things with conscious intent. Yeah,
I agree with that, and I know I've spoken with you, Jan, before about being involved with some incidences of instant healing when it was called for, right? Mm-hmm. And it was very much the purity of the desire and intention for the desired outcome, provided you've checked in and it's in alignment with the highest part of the other person. Again, we talked about this. Is this two different timelines, or is it collapsing timelines? Because when I've worked with this, I see it as a collapse of timelines. I see the person in the state they're in that is suffering, and I see them in their baby perfect state in the age they are, but this perfect illuminated state of health and well-being. And in that moment, when you collapse these two timelines, boom, with the strongest, clearest of intention, and then let it go, and let it go, and let it go. Only in that moment. And it's up to the being to receive. It's up to the other being to receive. To that being to choose to magnetize to that perfected vision of these collapse. I call it a collapse timeline. You would probably say that you're jumping over to another reality. Either way, I don't know the truth of it. I only know in my own mind how I'm seeing it when I assist someone with that. And it is shocking because it is instantaneous. And again, without the purity, I think the clarity of that vision, and then the secondary fact of letting it go and never going back and checking in on it. Again, this whole thing, gee, I wonder if it worked. Boom, you're now inserting a lower frequency program. Can't even go back and check on your wonderful kind of wish for that person. Let's say that, because you're just a facilitator. And so, again, I think, I can't see how anything works if there is not mind. And I don't mean mind in terms of the left side of the brain. I mean mind in terms of the great thing that can create thoughts and desire and ideas throughout the universe and in every single one of us, right down to animals and plants for that matter. That mind kind of precedes everything, and having the purity of mind and clarity of mind to be clear on what it is we're desiring, I think that's step number one. Then we can do all these beautiful things within it. And we see life around us when we have thoughts that are muddy and unclear. I was reading the magazine The Week this morning, the newest one. You were saying, you're oh my God. Zeus and I are sitting, all of these dewdrops are dropping on us. My hair's getting all kinky curly and everything. Drinking cold tea and reading in The Week what's happened in the last week on this planet. And it's like, where am I? What has happened to our reality? This is a distinctly, collectively strange reality. And that gets back to, I did mention Carl Kalaman in my talk, didn't I?
Yes. Yes, you did. Yes.
I took a picture of the book, so I'm going to get it.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about that, he's talking about different dimensions of consciousness. And if what we're seeing around us was given birth to in a six-dimensional consciousness of patriarchy, of structure, of division, separation, hierarchy, and so forth. And now we're having this opportunity to literally jump to a ninth wave of consciousness, which to me is another dimension of consciousness. And these are all interpenetrating. Any one of us has the choice with our own being, our own desire, will, and mind to choose to enter into the ninth state of consciousness, which is what you were talking about earlier, that incredible state of unity. It's here now. That wave is happening if we want to kind of catch the wave. And so again, this clarity of intention. We don't have to stay in this world that's represented in the magazine The Week. I love the magazine, but wow, what a load of bad news this week. few good things in there, a few really sweet, quirky, fun things in there, but a lot of it was just dark. That's not my reality. And I don't mean that in a callous sense, because my heart, I can't stand to see it injustice perpetuated against others, and it breaks my heart 1,000 times. I get very upset at this, at witnessing this, and it's very hard to realize I don't choose this. I will be part as best I can to raise awareness to a level where we can't accept this in ourselves as a species anymore. But beyond that, at the end of the day, I've got to kind of cut bait and go to the world that my being and my thoughts have created. You know, we're all living in our own energy bubble. Each one of us is in our completely different, all of us here are in a completely different creation than anyone else on the screen.
So true.
Well, and before Jan was speaking, I had written down this thought, and it ties so perfectly. I love when this happens. The thought that popped into my awareness was, in order to fix something, we have to see it as broken first. And how often when I have done healing work with others, again, that is, how are we viewing that individual, that person? And when we experience them in their wholeness, that's the experience that we get to have. And I have a quote, and it kind of touches on this also. It's about when we see others as masters, we get to experience them as masters. And so I think it's absolutely what all of you are saying. When we change the way that we view the world and our experiences, it has to follow, it has to be that way. So fix, colloquially, I'll say fix the broken thinking, or fix the acculturation that says that this is outside of ourselves. Fix the way that we relate with our worlds. And I know, even if I have had a difficult conversation with someone, if I just pause and get still and I say something as simple as, of course they've got this, I know that they know what to do here, I get to have the amazing experience of then having them know what to do there. Or if I say something like, they know the best of all things for them, I get to experience them knowing the best of all things for them. That's the beauty. So which world, which experience has our faith, our commitment? I think that's a really good question, and something I ask myself regularly.
You know, what you just said, Nicole, is just like what Jan said with different words.
Yes,
I'm getting like deja vu constantly in this stream today.
That's why I thought it was so perfect.
Yeah. And Jan, when you were talking about the shaman who stopped the fire, and she did it by going inside to see what was wrong with her thinking. And what you just said, Regina, about the bubbles, and we're all in different bubbles. And Nicole saying, fixing how I perceive this person so the person can fix their problem. I just have to say, Ho'oponopono, if you guys have ever studied the ancient prayer of Ho'oponopono, it's reconciliation and restitution. So you say, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, about anything you see wrong. Riots in the streets, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. It's like almost like taking responsibility for the world that's around you in your bubble and saying, if I'm experiencing that fire in Machu Picchu, it's because something inside of me needs to change. And I don't know. I really love it. Do you guys know Ho'oponopono?
Yes, and thank you for bringing that up. What you just said is very wise and very beautiful. I can't think of a better way to approach it for the outside world, because I haven't been using Ho'oponopono for a while now, and you're reminding me that that's such a beautiful, elegant way for that outside reconciliation. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I need to do more of it. Every time I watch the news, which is like not often.
And it's an inside reconciliation too, which is, I think, the point we're making.
So many people in the Mandela effect world do practice it because they go to my channel and say, I know Ho'oponopono. How did you find it? And I'm like, I don't know. How did you find it? Because it's such a kind of obscure kahuna Hawaiian prayer system.
Well, I covered it in Reality Shifters News years ago, but I've been tracking this monthly for 20 years plus. So obviously all these things have come through at some point.
Can one of you please bring up the sequence of the things you say about forgiveness and love? The sequence of the things you say with Ho'oponopono.
Can I start? Because I really studied it very detailed. And what I found was that Myrna, the mother of Ho'oponopono, who taught it as a kahuna up until the 1960s or 70s, she brought it to the Western world because Westerners went there. She always started with, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. And then Joe Vitale, very good books and seminars with Dr. Hugh Lin, who was the student of Myrna. They changed it to I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. So I'm like, I like both approaches because I've studied both of them. So when I feel like I am personally involved in the dispute, the problem, I always go, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you, over and over and over until the prayer disappears. And if I feel like it's something they're doing to polar bears in wherever they're living now, because there's no more Arctic for them, I feel like that's a human responsibility. I start with, I love you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. Over and over and over until the prayer stops. And when the prayer stops of its own accord, it's done. It's reconciled. Restitution has been achieved. So I say sorry first if I'm personally involved, like I offended a family member. And then if I'm not personally involved, I do the Myrna prayer and I start with I love you.
You know what I'm hearing, Eileen, relating back to what Regina and I were talking about in instantaneous healings. Healings work when you can see the perfection in someone.
Yes.
Which can be related to I love you. You know, like you're just seeing the perfection in them. So I can see we're having I love you first by not looking at the problem, but looking at the love and seeing them as pure love.
That was Myrna.
Yeah, I love that.
That was a feminine approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, that rings more true than I'm sorry first, because
I was going to say the same thing, because that love, when you feel it, then it connects you with someone. And if you don't have that, then why would you even hear the apology in the first place? That gets back to where we started with all these fractured groups and, where you think, well, you would say that, you're one of them.
Yes. So now maybe I'm just going to stick with the Myrna prayer. You see how flexible I am? I can just shift and move with you guys.
Well, and as I was hearing you share your thoughts, all of you, I was thinking, do I have to have an opinion on this? And I thought that was really, I'm a fan of self-permission and this sense of it doesn't have to be a certain way. And in the moment that it's being utilized, ask, what is it, what feels true, like you were talking about, Eileen. The arrangement of the words, or even the insertion of words of your own, what feels true to you in that moment. And feels heart connecting or heart opening, whatever that is for you, that can be perfect because it's yours and it's what is evocative for you. So for me, I don't think like I have to have a way, like the ways are perfect.
Good point. All ways are perfect as long as it's your way.
Yes.
Got it.
I just have to ask Jan a question, if you can make the shortest answer possible. It's a tricky question, because you brought something up in your talk and you said you wouldn't go there, but you know how that kind of thing, it's like that, like, oh my gosh, I want that cookie in the jar. So you said only 2 things on the planet don't have an agenda. And could you say, you don't have to say what they are, you can give us clues, but can you talk about what's going on with that? Because it reminds me also of Nicole. She's like, we don't have to have a purpose. It's okay just to be, which I think is really cool. But there's a couple things that you say just are that way. That's
right. It happened, and somebody, I can't remember, maybe it was Nicole, one of the women mentioned Emoto's work with the water.
Oh.
Was that you, Nicole?
Yeah.
Okay, so I really worked with him, and I met with him, and to me it was a fascinating thing because he was doing so much interesting studies with the water. And so I asked the water, I journeyed to the water, the element of water, and I said, tell me something about yourself that I don't know. And it said, I carry no agenda, so whatever you program me, then I will reflect back to you. And so, in a shamanic viewpoint, there is no such thing as pollution. It's just polluted thoughts are being reflected back to us, and that's what we see. And so, you can program water then. You can put words on your water bottles. At Lightsong, we make apparel, and we call it high frequency apparel, where we have all these really positive words, because we are mostly water, you know,
Yes.
80% water or something like that. So what you're having on, what you're, you know, it's all programming your water inside. You can program the water in your bathtub and then have it go down the drain, and somebody else is going to have that as rain someday. You know, water is just constantly recycling around the world. And so you can send these beautiful, loving programs. The other one like that is clear quartz crystal. And that's why it's been used in healing, because it's completely programmable. And that's why, of course, it was discovered for watches, you know, because they ran electrodes through the crystal at second intervals that'll hold that program then for eternity, really. They just keep going and going and going. And the same reason why they're in computers and various things like that. And they've always been used as shamanic tools, because you can program them to help you in particular things. And so those are the two things that I know of. But everything else always has an agenda. It has a purpose for being here, and a reason. And those two are reason free. And so you can work with them in a neutral way.
But I like what Nicole says too. You don't have to know that you have a purpose. It's okay just to have fun. Just be yourself.
You know? But I think that, though, that's what gives qualities of like herbs, you know, medicinal properties and all of those kind of things, because everything has a purpose. And, you know, often by a poisonous plant, the antidote is going to grow right next to it. And, you know, all of our pharmaceuticals are actually, you know, in the beginning, they are all from shamanic experiences of journeying to the plants and finding out how it would be used in their DNA. And, you know, all of this information was gathered from the shamans. And then, you know, it's very contemporized today, but that's where it all started from, you know, because everything has a purpose. So what's its purpose, and how do you utilize that in the whole? Everything counts. There's nothing that doesn't count. It's all a part of God, and it all is being utilized for the whole, you know,
Would you extend that, Jan, to bugs and things that people don't like?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel the same way about them.
Absolutely. Yes, every single thing has a purpose. There's no mistakes. There's no accidents on the planet. Everything has a purpose, and it's all part of God. God is in everything. And so that also, if we want to say God or consciousness, but that allows then a person to be able to communicate with it. Because when you're communicating, let's say with a bug, like it was with ants that I was informed how to create Lightsong. My whole school, my whole community, which is thousands and thousands of people, you know, it's like, it all came from the ants, you know, and they really told me about it, you know, and so it's like you don't discount anything. It has a reason, and you can communicate with anything. You can communicate with your computer. You can communicate with a chair. You know, it has a consciousness to it, and it's all.
I used to love bugs. That was when I was little. I would just yell "bug," and my mom would thought it was so cute. I would find them everywhere. At home, camping, everywhere, and that was my big thing. And I would stare and watch ants for hours, literally hours. And I'd draw pictures of bugs. You know, I thought they were fascinating.
They are fascinating.
However, I do have a little joke, not a joke, but a way of dealing with mosquitoes. I'll go, choose back to the collective, choose differently next time.
Yeah, I'm kind of that way with mosquitoes too. My daughter used to catch slugs in England and call them her pets. And I'm like, well, as long as we can put them back in the garden before they die in the jar, that's fine. You can keep your pet for 2 hours. But yeah, she loved bugs too.
Yeah.
I want to bring something up that never came up. And if we did have a panel, it would have come up. And that would be this idea of multiple personality. Because I thought that was fascinating, Jan. And the Mandela effect. Because I brought it up in my talk. I don't know if people noticed. You brought it up in yours. Here it is. It's the panel discussion. But now we've got the ladies of IMEC and the View. So I'd love to just bring that subject up for all of you. Did you have thoughts on this when you were watching both of the presentations today? So it's everyone except Jan and I. If you didn't see it, that's okay. You can have your thoughts anyway. Regina's welcome. Just like, what are your thoughts about this multiple personality? I was saying, it doesn't have to be a disorder. We're having celebrities come out and say, like, I've got this and I'm living with it. And maybe it's why I'm successful. I'm able to switch from being a sports player to a business person. I also have what they call a disorder, but I'm working through it. So I think that's fascinating. And it gets into this concept of a symphony of selves that we have many of us, which really gets into, yes, there's oneness, but we can also access the multitude of possibilities within ourselves. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and also I think, Jan, when you and I have talked about this before, when we were doing other interviews and such, we were talking about these multiple personalities from being in different timelines, not just existing simultaneously, but literally having been in different, as we understand timelines, different timelines. And I find it absolutely fascinating. And I would love to know the answer as to why a person would choose to live with all these expressions in one lifetime, if not for some kind of expediency in learning. Why would someone choose to express all of these at once? I don't understand the larger purpose.
You mean so fully? You're talking about like when it's really full blown and they're going back and forth like crazy.
Back and forth. Unless it's expediency. You've got a vehicle. We've got this amount of time. We can experience 5 or 6 different realities and maybe do some kind of balancing in this. Why, in your opinion, Jan, would a being choose this? Or be
picture of life? Why would they choose it? Well, my answer to everything is the soul is really curious. Consciousness learns about itself through experiences. And if we move it into the Mandela effect, maybe these people were showing us different dimensions and we missed it. We didn't know how to explain it. The other thing that I really glean from the multiple experience is we were talking about memory. They don't have a memory of their other lifetime. So they can move fully into that expression and not know they did it because they have no memory of it. And so that makes that miraculous, instantaneous thing happen like that. You know, they're blind in one life and you snap your fingers and they're sighted.
Yeah.
So there's no memory there though that says, oh, you know, I remember being sighted. No, they don't. You know, they're just fully there.
That's what makes it special about the Mandela effect community. Now, Regina, you didn't see my Q&A after my talk, but I brought up the ideas from Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, the philosopher, one of the two who created calculus. So basically, we still use his notation. Calculus is, don't worry about the math. It's not important. But the important thing is, forget that. But if you have something like this pen I'm holding right here, and I touch it with my finger, then there's a part of me that's aware that that's a perception. And then there's a self-reflective order. The first order is the touch, and that's a straightforward sensory perception, firing neurons and so forth, communicating it. The next level would be the second order of reflective perception. What I'm suggesting with the Mandela effect is, okay, so you've got your first level, touch. Your second level, it's like Flatland. You've seen that book Flatland, where everything is kind of like this, and then it's a miracle if a dimensional object like a pen goes through their flat plane, because it changes shape as it goes through. Starts as a point, grows into a bigger circle, becomes really weird, and then it vanishes. Like, what was that? And so what I'm suggesting is the third level of perception, this third level of reflective perception is what humans are evolving into right now with the Mandela effect. I'm just presenting it as a possible theory since we're all talking about these multiple personalities and so forth. And I think it's fascinating because then you suddenly realize it would be possible then for someone who does have these multiplicities, as some celebrities are now doing, stepping out and saying, you know what, I know I've got these different personalities. And you know what, it's making me more functional. I think that's fascinating. Yeah. So to me, it fits like the whole thing.
Yeah, like it's more broadly functional. And why not? I mean, this is just something popping in. I'm just thinking of it this moment.
Yep.
So if we're in the process, if the planet itself is in the process of shifting its own frequency range, as many people believe it is, right? That's
Right.
going to require literally a different kind of set of experience. What we would experience in the third dimension versus what we'd experience in the fourth and the fifth are very different ranges of experience. So if we're in this kind of quickening and transitionary period where we're moving into another dimension or density base that offers completely different range of experiences, it would almost on a pragmatic level make sense to see more and more multiple personalities, because we're coming in and reconciling so much of our third dimensional experience from our own quote history. So it makes sense. I said earlier, and I don't like to be so pragmatic because I do love the magic of it, but maybe there is something expedient and practical about coming in with these different facets fully expressing themselves within the same space of time in the same body, so to speak, as we make this transition. It's just a thought.
Absolutely. And something that came up in the chat today, and we didn't get to touch on it in the Q&As, but here's our chance right now. It's when people notice that their family has changed. This is a big Mandela effect situation. I've seen it for more than 20 years in my Reality Shifters news, but it's a big thing in every single one of our little subset communities, where they just say, like, my family's different, or these people are different. They've changed, like, overnight. One of our board members, Jerry Darkwolf Hicks, he has a cute story about his childhood friends. It's like they played musical personalities. One day they all switched. It's like we're on The View, and whoever, like, now I'm the atheist, It's like, what? Or, it's like we all trade places. So I'd love people's thoughts on that too.
I felt that I've been different people at different stages of my life. Like there was a stage where I was really shy and really quiet. And then I had this NDE where it's not a near death, it's a death if you flatline. And then you watch yourself be resuscitated. And I came in all bold and outspoken. And somebody said, what's it called when you get a new thing comes in? What's that called?
Yeah.
They said, are you a walk-in? And I said, I don't think so, because I remember my whole past being shy, but I'm a Gemini. I'm really a Taurus, but if you go by current astrology, I'm a Gemini. So I feel like that pre-death me was the shy, quiet one that didn't have the courage to stand up in class. And the post-death me was the first one with her hand up, happy to speak my opinions. I just changed, but I still felt like I was me.
And this happens. It's like, I brought that up in my talk too. The guy that got hit by lightning, and he was a physician, a doctor, and he turned into a composer and a pianist. That kind of thing happens a lot, more than people can explain. So it's happening, and then it happened to you. Wow.
I don't think I'm a walk-in. I really don't. I don't want to be a walk-in. I want to be the shy kid that died and came back bold,
So what happened, Eileen? What happened?
Oh, you're going to love this story. I had an immunization. Anaphylactic shock. I was living in Cairo half the time with my dad. My mom was in Chicago, and they had the oil company had a medical doctor in an office, no hospital, nothing like that. And we used to line up and get our extra immunizations every year for smallpox, yellow fever, gamma globulin. The list went on and on. Plus we got our regular ones. But back in the 70s, regular shots meant like 15 in your lifetime, and now it's like 64. Right. So I got that shot in my arm, and I felt it burn as it moved, and my arm turned bright red. And I looked at the doctor and said, is that normal? And those were my last words. I just collapsed.
How old were you?
I was 17. It was 1977, and I was in Mahdi, Egypt, which is a little suburb of Cairo where I was living with my dad. And they didn't have paddles. What they had was adrenaline shots in the doctor's trunk, because I was the last one seen that day. So he left me with my dad because the nurses weren't getting the adrenaline quick enough. And I just watched the whole resuscitation from the ceiling. And I mirrored my body. I was floating over my body, and I didn't know who that was. I had no emotional connection to the 17-year-old girl on the table. But I did feel bad for the man standing at her head, rubbing her face, crying, please come back. Please talk to me. Please come back. Open your eyes. And I even heard my name. He was calling my name, but it wasn't my name. I was free. I wasn't that person. But I felt bad for him, but not bad enough to go back in the body, because it's kind of nice when you're flying free.
Oh, it's very nice. I love it, love it, love it. I remember that clearly.
I remember from your stories. And so I got the first shot of adrenaline, and the doctor got me to say something. And I said, let me go. 17 years old, loves life, and says, let me go.
You said that out loud. It's not.
I said it out loud.
Everybody heard you.
Everybody heard me. So he gave me a second shot of adrenaline.
Ooh.
And said, you're not going anywhere. You are staying here. And I'm like, huh? What? And then he's like, just lay flat for 8 hours, because if you sit up, you will have a heart attack. You have got double the amount of adrenaline a human body can take.
Gosh.
He was like, this girl is not going to die on me today. She is coming back. But how profound that a 17-year-old soul would say, no, I'm not coming back. It feels nice being free.
I relate. I can understand.
Yeah, I can too. I can too.
And I came back mystical. Like I wanted to know where God was and who was God and who are humans and why are we here and where are we going after here? And then that made me bold and brave, and like, because I didn't fear death, I would climb the pyramid and sit halfway up it and go, it doesn't matter if I fall, you know, I'm coming back.
So you brought this up. I have to go there. You know, so much of our community believes that the Mandela effect depends upon these sorts of death experiences. How do you feel about that?
After listening to you and everybody here and everybody in my chat rooms, I do a live meditation with Shane, and you've been on it, Cynthia, and we got to get Regina on it, and Jan and Lauren and Nicole. It's just live earth healing meditations led by the community in the chat. And I listen to them and they're like, no, I didn't die. So I can't say you have to have a near-death experience to be Mandela affected. But then I read Suso's book and I'm like, yeah, man, you died a lot of times, probably. You just don't know it. You just jumped slightly over into another dimension of you, because he had so many near misses, didn't he?
He really did.
Yeah.
But some people, like Regina says, they're slow learners. I'm not saying anything about Suso, but you know, some of us, I'll say me too, we're all slow sometimes. And so I think maybe we get lots of do-overs that we're not aware of. That's an idea.
We don't know they're do-overs. So can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
Sharon Disney said for this panel today, she put it in a comment on IMEC. She said, please ask the ladies of the IMEC view, it relates to what you just said, can you be dead in one timeline and alive in another? And if so, would you be a body and a spirit in one, and just a body, or just a spirit lingering in the other one?
I'll open that up to everybody. Anybody want to go for it?
Go for it, guys.
In my talk, I really talked about how I see most of our consciousness outside of the body. There's only a tiny portion, let's say a percentage of your consciousness is actually animating your body. Well, that other, part of you, which I call the supercell, can have all different kinds of lifetimes going on in parallel reality. And so let's say in your experience, Eileen, you came back, in another lifetime, you went on. There's a part of you that did that. And in shamanism, we experience this a lot because we work a lot with people that have crossed over, and we see different versions of them and how they show up. And when people say, well, I thought this happened, I said, it's both. You can be in multiple places at the same time, because your consciousness is the universe. You are everything. You are all things. And so, yes, there's all of those different versions.
Well, my experience is I feel like I'm too big to fit in here. I'm like the iceberg. This is the tip, but I'm not God. I feel like when I'm dead, I get to hang out with something bigger than me. Yes, I'm big, but I'm not all of it. I feel like I'm aware of levels of myself, if that makes any sense. And it's kind of like there are levels that we can increasingly become aware of. And I think that's exciting, just to notice like what like what level is operating right now? It's a great question. I don't think we answered all of it either, Eileen, when you talked about like what's floating around and so forth. That got interesting.
Yeah. And one of the concepts in the Mandela effect community is NPCs, the non-player character. So are we, as Michelle from Awaken, Activate, and Shame from Unbiased on the Fence always say, we are other people's NPCs in other timelines, because we're in this one and they're not. Their bodies around us, but they're active in another one. Do you guys get that whole, your spirit can jump from version to version to version of you?
When I was a child, I thought my family was like what you call NPCs. I felt like they weren't fully there. That was my take on it. And I could see it in photographs. I felt like I was more there than they were. It was very weird. And maybe you're right, but I've sometimes meditated on aligning myself with all my possible selves. And at the end, we're going to play a 7-minute video, the Mandela montage. At the very end of it, if you've seen it, I think it's Jen's Gems. She holds up her hand, waves her fingers, and she has this idea that your spirit is huge and any given lifetime is just one expression, one possible reality. And that's very similar to, ideas from physics and also shamanism and also my experience. But when we say them as all the same as one, personally, I don't experience that. That's all I'm saying. So I'm being a skeptic on the oneness thing, just because, yes, there's oneness, but I do not normally feel like that is me. I'm not saying I am God. I'm saying I like hanging out with the oneness. Love it. My favorite thing. That's why I love to be dead. But and as big as I am, so much bigger than fits in this body or this identity, which I know is much bigger. It barely fits. And I've had feelings of that sometimes. But I'm still not that oneness. So my take on the oneness is a little different than what was described earlier. So I would, in whether you call it theology or what have you, people would usually say, well, then you've got a theology. You're not an atheist. And maybe that's true. So that's where I'm saying, okay, you could call that God. That would be the ultimate goodness. And I know that I'm not running everything at that level. I know what it feels like when I am my big me. It's amazing. I can do amazing things, change weather, I've seen it. I've seen hundreds of people change with my thoughts. I've seen it a lot. So it's like, whoa, that's crazy, but I'm not God. I know I'm not God. I'm not going to get.
What are you? What are you? You're a different
I'm an archangel in training. Like I would love that. Yeah, you touch me. I would love you to be able to touch God, but I also know that I'm not God. It's like I am not God. Yeah. So, yeah.
But you're a different kind of being.
Yes,
definitely.
There's a curiosity for me here, because when I drop into the space of I am not Nicole, I am not the story of Nicole, I do. Right. It's all consciousness. And so there is like no concept of, because that's a story. And there's a curiosity with Eileen when you're relating this anecdote about your experience, and you were shy and then you're floating and you let go of this concept. There's no attachment to the identity, the story of Eileen. So when you come back, because there's no attachment, and you can have the remembrances, but there's still not the attachment to the story. And so when they're without the attachment of the story, this is what Eileen is. This is how Eileen behaves. It opens for you to behave, to create a new story.
Well, I'm more indigenous, like the original thinking. Like the story's already there. Like I got my story. I feel it.
Oh,
like,
I don't have that. I mean, I can have that, but I can also I can exist without the story, and without the body. There isn't sense of anything physical. It's just consciousness, and it's infinite. So when Jan was talking about, she was answering the question, I would have to agree that is my sense, my experience of, we can have an experience of, being in a physical body and in this reality, but it's not the totality. We are expansive and infinite. And so it allows us to have, like, in any given moment, we have access to the totality of who we are. And I wrote down earlier, it's like it cannot, you were talking about, Cynthia, like, why atheism as opposed to, yes. And like the one thought is it cannot be known. And for me, it is already known. So
Right.
do I allow myself to know what is already there? It's already present. It's, so, that's why I ask myself, what is the truth? What is it? Because the answer is there if I allow myself to know it. So, and it doesn't make books wrong, because sometimes I'll say, well, I want to get that information from a book, or I want that information from a conversation. This is about choicefulness. Or do I just want to ask the question, or just allow myself to know what I already know? So does that make sense?
That's like Kimberly's poem. It's like what she was saying about the child again. Like the child already knows. You've got that childlike wonder to you, which I love.
Can we get really freaky here?
Go for it.
Is it allowed?
Yes.
Freaky.
Okay, I'm going to share it now. Shane knows about it. A few people in my community know about it. It depends on if I talk to them outside of YouTube. One of my favorite authors, besides Cynthia sitting right here, is PMH Atwater, and I've read most of her books, including Future Memory. And that's what ties me and Cynthia together, because we both know about future memory, and you credit her for reality shifting, which I think is brilliant, because she is an amazing person, but she studied near death, 4,000 people. And she studied it like a police superintendent, and she figured out what do they share in common, no matter what the age, the religion, the race, you name it, anywhere in the world. What is the commonality of these people who actually died? So they have a medical proof that they died and were resuscitated. And sometimes she went into some who were near death and they were in comas, because they had very similar experiences, but not the same as when, like Nicole was saying, when that cord is cut and you no longer identify with the thing that's below you that was you a minute ago is no longer you. They come back with gifts, not only with a desire for love, compassion, and mysticism, and understanding God and humans and the role of all of this that we're seeing, like Jen's gems play. But I came back seeing auras. So I asked my mom, I said, I see colors around people all the time, especially if there's a white background, a yellow background. I'll be sitting on a plane reading everybody's aura. And I'm like, is this a safe plane to be on, or am I seeing any black anywhere? Okay, I'm going to stay on the plane. Everybody's got good colors, right? So, which reminds me of your story, Regina. And my mom said, very wise woman, she was a natural herbalist and homeopathist, but she was self-taught. So she was kind of like what would be considered a witch in a previous lifetime. And she said, darling, I'm going to give you books on it. And if you don't like it, turn it off. And I did. I literally decided I don't want to see colors everywhere around people, because even their body parts would have different colors.
Sure.
And sometimes they were disturbing colors and you could tell something was going on there. And I'm like, I'm not comfortable reading people's auras. And I shut it off. But I learned how to cloud bust and cloud vaporize. Does anybody on this panel bust up clouds by looking at them? You do. Yeah. I do. Shane does. I got this weird thing in England where I was for over 20 years, where the sun never shines. It's like cloudy 300 days of the year, and sun comes out 60 days of the year, 65 days of the year. And I'm in Florida now, where it's the opposite. It's sunshine 300 days a year and clouds 60 days of the year. And I did that on purpose. And I was missing the sun so much that wherever I went, a little hole would appear and the sunshine would be above us. Whether we were in a shopping center, in our car, it had trouble following us because that little hole in the cloud took time. So by the time I got to Florida, and I'm like, sunshine, I'm sitting out at Starbucks having a coffee, and it starts to rain in the sunshine on every table except for mine. So a man sitting over there getting his newspaper wet comes up to me and he goes, do you mind if I sit with you? And I said, no, of course not. Sit here. And he said, you do realize you are the only table not being rained on right now. And I went, oh, I guess you're right. I didn't notice because I wasn't getting wet. I didn't notice the people on the other tables were getting wet and moved inside. So that's my little thing that came back with me from my death experience. I brought back first an ability to see auras, and that went away. And now I can just move clouds and have more sunshine in my life. So
Yay.
just wanted to share.
That's amazing. I love that story. You need a new name.
Yeah, that sunshine gatherer. I don't know. It's funny, and people in my family do know about it because it's really obvious when the whole the whole sky is gray, except where you and your family are, and you can get that little bit of sunshine.
Sunshine girl. That is cool. But I want to go back to that multiple personality thing, if anybody had more thoughts on that, because that is a big clue, I believe, to the Mandela effect. And bring it back to the Mandela effect, too, because more for everyday experiencers of the Mandela effect, when they're noticing logos are changing, products are changing. You can't go to the grocery store and not see all sorts of things different than you remember that they should be. It can be quite disorienting. So any thoughts on various aspects of ourselves and how this might relate to the Mandela effect?
For me, when you're speaking of meditating, and I know that a lot of people are meditators, and the Mandela effect, what I perceive happening, again, I'm very interested in these different hemispheres of the brain, and or even brain versus heart. I think the right brain and the heart are synonymous, sort of in their functions, because in a oneness state, which I think you can find in meditation, you also develop a real sense of allowing. And when you are in an allowing place, then I believe you're not as rigid in what you're holding to be true. And so it opens you up then for much more possibility. And so that there's a kind of a training almost of the mind to not be so active and to be still and open and allowing and just in the isness. And I think that's where the magic comes in. That's where very creative ideas can come out of that, or experiences of bliss and detaching from the body and all these different beautiful things. Everyone, meditation seems to be different. And I've been meditating since I was a teenager. I mean, I love it. And, but they're always different. I mean, I think I'm going to go in and experience one thing and I'm just blown away with where it takes me. And so I think that opens me up to the Mandela effect, that I am not rigid in my thinking, of how things are supposed to be or should be. It just allows me to be more allowing. And going back to what Regina and I were saying earlier, then I can see the beauty in people. I can see the love in them much more easily because I'm not all stuck in my opinions or my judgments or something like that. I don't see judgment on the right side of the brain or in the heart. All those things are left brain functions, and we're trained in them. We're, like Nicole was saying, they're the constructs that we buy into from the time we take our first breath. And as children, we see things differently and experience things differently. And then, as you were saying, Cynthia, our parents will often say, no, that might not be right. And we start conforming,
right?
We conform. And then, like Eileen, you then make decisions. I don't want to see auras. That's different. You didn't say that, but it's different. It makes me odd. I don't want to be exposed to this. I don't, and those are gifts. That's a clairvoyance that is also on the right side of the brain. And indigenous people were whole brained. They even trying to listen to indigenous people speak is really hard because they speak almost circularly, like in a circle. They don't make everything in a line and making sense. they speak in stories and come back to they're just all over the place, and we want to put everything in its place, and it's just a whole different way of living when you can get over there in that right brain. So.
And this whole conversation has not been too argumentative about different Mandela effect camps. Like if it was, then we'd be saying there'd be right now I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Someone would be at this point saying, okay, Eileen, so would you say that this might be evidence for the simulation, that you go, when one of you dies, then you've lost some energy there. The other ones now have more energy, and the gifts come from the matrix or something. I mean,
what's your question? I have no idea how I came back seeing auras, bold, outspoken, and affecting clouds. That is all of that I never asked for. These things were just like given to me to wake me up even more. And then it made me Mandela affected on top of everything. That was the biggest shock. Moving a cloud and seeing an aura is nothing compared to seeing the Mandela effect, where things around you that you think are permanent just change, flip, flop, change. So that was the big awakening for me, was the ME.
And they still blow my mind. I was in the garden. This is because I it's so funny. I'm just looking at it. The plant moved. The roots moved. I mean, the whole thing. It's just a little tiny. I know. It's like 6 inches over. Nothing else moved. It's in relationship to everything else. I'm not getting bored of these or tired of these. They still shock me, but I'm rolling with it. So, but that one was like, oh my gosh.
I just don't have a clue. I don't know where these things are coming from. Maybe our higher selves, the bit of us that doesn't fit in our body.
Yes. Well, that's what Regina said in the keynote, I think. And then I think a lot of us were riffing on that same day, you and Evan Maitreya. That was your point. The big takeaway from me from that day, from your talk and from Evan's, was just, this is the high self. It's a wake-up call. It's like, pay attention, because we can't live on this egoic level. And it ties in with this idea that if the body is sick, we need to go within and fix ourselves. So that's what's happening, I believe. It's all chicken and egg. What's causing what? Is it God? Sure. Or is it us waking up? Yes. Or is it that time when the rotation of all of the Mayan calendars and everything lines up? Yes. It is that the ninth wave. Yes. It's this is quantum thinking, by the way. It's like you can say yes to all of it. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And that touches on what Nicole DeMario said after her Q&A, where she was saying quantum physics is going to evolve. We're evolving. The physics itself is going to change. I would agree with that. So I think we're in the most interesting times humanity's ever seen, at least in our written history, which is probably changing even now.
Yeah, I think it'd be hard for all of us here to argue, because I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I'll go with that. It's just this openness to all the possibilities. And like you told me, I said, I'm doing a lot of things that I don't know which one of them or which combo could possibly be affecting brainwave function. And you're just like, Eileen, it could be all of them or none of them. It doesn't matter. Present it all.
But these people in the camps, I know that they love their camps. So they'd want to know, like, well, can you relate at least to our camp? So you want to say a few words of relating to the various camps you're aware of? Give some shout outs.
I will. I'm going to give some shout outs. I love Gypsy Road. I love Eric and Bob, and I love Brian Stavely, and I really love Truth Seeker 69. I don't know Karen B as much, but when she's on with Brian, I just love these guys because they're incredibly creative, extremely Mandela affected. Mm-hmm. And in my experience, they've always been really kind to me, because I've never been a flat earther, but I'm not really a global ball earther either. You know me, Cynthia. Mm-hmm. I'm like, this is a hologram and it's multidimensional. So if you get a bunch of reality bubbles together to agree on something in the soup that's holding the reality bubbles together, you can experience it as a flat plane or a turtle, going back into shamanism and some of the Native American beliefs, or you can experience it as a ball, a spinning ball, or anything, an eyeball. I have a really good friend, Sherry, shout out to Overprotected. She does paranormal videos with Shane, and she has this great eyeball earth vision of Earth. And of course, what's better than that, than God's eye, looking in on all of this by looking out, and looking out by looking in. And then I'm into plasma physics, which is Tesla, Thunderbolts Project, Theoria Apohasis. He's a really hard name to say. He's brilliant on YouTube. And that's the idea that everything is information in light that's vibrating, and everything creates, if it becomes matter, it creates a toroidal field. So we all have one, the Earth has one, the moon has one, the galaxy, the universe, et cetera, et cetera. And all these vibrating toroidal fields hold each other up. So now you don't need dark matter, and you don't need black holes. You don't need quasars. All you have is information in light, in all different kinds of vibrations and forms. So that's my universe. So I'm quite happy to agree with flat earthers who are Mandela affected. I appreciate them. I like their channels, and I respect them. You know, I think they've got some good science behind what they're saying.
Do you know the other ones, like the Bible ones? There are lots of communities, lots and lots of them. And there's some that say,
Vanessa VA, who I worked with on the book, we came in contact with each other because she was doing Bible Mandela effect changes. And that's how I met Shane. He was doing Bible Mandela effect changes. And I'm not really good. I had to study the Bible in a Jesuit university. So I tried not to remember any of it. I was like, I got to memorize this tonight. So I'm like, get it out, which is terrible. That's a terrible way to, but I had to read the whole thing. Okay. And I had to regurgitate all of it onto tests. So it kind of put me in the Bible in a not good emotional place. But, you know, after that, I was really interested. So they schooled me. That's how I got to know Vanessa and Shane. They were schooling me on the Bible Mandela effect changes. I love Migs B. Yes. Migs B. She was at the first conference with SMQAI and Vanessa VA. They got to get together in, I think,
the
Virginia.
Midwest one. I think Scarab Dan and Guy Fox did the first conference, actually. It was a dinner party.
One. Yeah, I love those guys. Yeah, they were Scarab's got a new channel, which is even more biblical. And I'm listening to him and Brian McFarlane, because it's gentle Bible stories that I like. When I was in school having to read and memorize it, I didn't like it. But when I hear Scarab talking about it, or Brian McFarlane, or Guy Fawkes, or Life Matrix, or now, oh God, what is his name? He used to follow the globe and do pictures of it. Lone Eagle. Yes. Lone Eagle's going there now. They're all and I'm like, oh, I really like this. I can handle this because it's gentle, it's kind, and it's loving, and it's inviting.
And that fits what we've been saying at this conference too, going into that high self, that evolved state. Yeah. Thank you. I love the shout outs. Thank you.
Yeah, shout outs to all of them. If I forgot you, I'm really sorry. Because I'm on the spot now, so I'm not getting my memory clicking into all the different channels that I watch and appreciate.
There's so many.
So many.
And it's exploding.
And they're all valid.
It's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah. Every single one of you guys, whatever your platform is and whatever you believe, it's totally valid.
And that's a really important point. And it fits with the physics right now. Subjective reality is real. There is no one objective truth anyway. So we have to start getting around this concept that even if we're all talking oneness and people say, oh, they're too new age, the real truth is we're open to all of it. And, you know, that's the way that this physics is really working. We're seeing it in quantum physics experiments. And that's where our so-called hard science is going, which I think that should have been the cover story for 2019.
Maybe the next conference will be on that. There is no cover story. There's nothing that's totally objective. Rip and Rabbit Hole, we sit in that back lounge and debate all this stuff. Nachikita comes on, and, you know, all these channels. And there's just so many loving, wonderful people. And if you have a different view to me, bring it. I don't mind. I really don't mind. I would love to hear it. So I guess as this conference evolves, like science evolves, I think you guys are probably going to be hearing from all of these different factions in the Mandela community. They're all going to come together.
what would you like to see? Because I told in the conference what I'd like to see. I'd like to see science evolve. When I talked with Nicole, I said, that's where I'd like to see it go. I want to see the next level of science that goes beyond the broken assumptions of our classical physics, which has to do with assuming material realism, assuming objectivity, assuming, all these things like locality, that you can study something right here and nothing remote can ever influence it, and thinking that you're going to have an absolute fix on locations of things. No, it's probabilities. So, right, we know that model of the way we do science is broken. Absolutely.
It's broken.
No question. So let's rebuild it, and we're better than this community. That's what I would love to see. That's my dream.
Me too. I'm going to vote for that. How about you guys?
Okay. Yeah, let's chime in. Let's go around. We just got a few minutes left. So,
I'll jump in on something that was said a moment ago. When you were talking, Eileen, you were talking about whatever that soup is that holds this whole thing together, because that may precede all of this. I don't know. It may. And the soup, it's interesting. The physicist William Tiller had said that for what he calls that soup, he calls it a universal solvent. And he said that universal solvent, for lack of a better word, is love. Now, when we can start defining, which we can't define what love is, but when we can start defining that, whether it is a type of coherence that gives maybe a sense or a feeling of peace that passeth understanding. I find it interesting, and I'm just going to hop to a couple things quickly. One of the things that many of the people I've interviewed have referred to is when they're trying to get out of this state of knowing, the state of memory, the state of certainty. Men in particular oftentimes find that their break with this reality into that universal solvent, into that other realm, is oftentimes psychotropic drugs, for example. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that it'll give them a break. And I mean, and Carl and I were going back and forth and saying, well, look, that's all good, but it's great when you can get to the point where you can do it without that. That said, I've kind of done it all those ways, and I have to say the one thing that always remains consistent throughout each experience, whether it's a deep meditation and just there you are, the state of nothingness and everything all in the same moment through meditation, the same thing. It has that characteristic feeling of what we call coherence or love. And I have had some wacky experiences. Oh my God. Trying mushrooms in the Deutsches Museum, I sold psilocybin mushrooms in the Deutsches Museum. It doesn't seem to matter. Another time a boyfriend exposed me to ecstasy, which I tried once, and he said, please don't ever do that to anyone again. Because it doesn't matter what I do. It's all the same place. It goes into that universal solvent. Alcohol. I mean, oh my God, I made a horrible fool out of myself and embarrassed my partner at a big event in Oakland. It was a mayoral candidate, and someone spiked my drink. It all ends the same way. I'm hanging around the mayoral candidate's neck, telling her how much I love her, and how she is, and then hanging around her boyfriend. I love you, and you're so beautiful. And so with ecstasy just being gone, he thought I was going to have to call an EMT or a doctor or an ambulance, because I was having a blast. It was the same as your out-of-body experience you were talking about, right? Just gone. Just like, oh my God, sorry he's having such an awful time. This is great. It's just like, and there's no personality, there's no identity, there's no past, and there's no future in that state. I find it's always the same thing. It goes into this incredible place of coherence from which everything else is created. So I just wanted to bring that up, that maybe the glue underneath everything is that simple state of coherence that we call love, and all creation is possible because of that initial coherence to begin with. I don't see the universe as chaotic. I see it as incredibly coherent with every possibility to express itself because of that. And I know you might see it very differently, Cynthia.
No, I see it very much the same. In fact, a lot of people email me right now in the midst, they don't read the news if they can avoid it. But if they do, they say it's so weird. Despite what I see in the news, I feel, and then it's everything you just said, I feel love. I feel like things are great. I feel blissed out. I feel like there's an uplifting feeling going on right
I think
now.
that
And
must
that's,
be true. That
it
holds
is,
everything together. The universe
yeah,
solvent, the thing that makes everything else possible. And as
right.
much as we can find our way into it, to remember what this is, what we are, what you are, what everybody is.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to spend some energy and time, is always just dipping back into that. However you have to get there. I would not suggest gin and tonics.
Right. Good point. So let's go around one more time. And thank you so much, Regina. I'm so glad you could join us for this. This has been fabulous. Really special.
Thank you, everyone. You're just beautiful souls. Everyone's so articulate and has such depth of thought. The boy energy's ratcheting up. Another one just arrived. He's pulled right up. The little one's out there. My husband's out there. My dog is right here. They're all the noise is starting to ramp up. I'm going to mute and then jump off in a minute. And I want to
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Love you, Regina. Love you. Jan, you want to say a couple last words for the group, or before we sign off our IMEC view?
I see the God in you, I guess would be, the namaste. It's just, if you can live in namaste and just see the divine in everything, I think it's a great way to live. I mean, it's just, to me, it helps me. It's just a great way to live. I don't know how else to say it. People have said to me before, they'd say, if I'm talking about something, they'd say, Jen, how do you know you're right? And I'd say, right makes absolutely no difference to me. I could care less about being right. What I look for in people when I listen to them is the quality of their life. How happy are they? And if they're not that place, what then needs to be adjusted inside for them to bring them to that place? And, so we don't have the answers. We'll never have the answers. That's what they call the great mystery. And if you just allow yourself to say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. What is my level of happiness in this? And if it's not there, then find something that's going to bring you into a greater place, no matter what that is for you. And if you find it, then hang on to it and just enjoy it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Nicole. Do you have any few words you'd like to share with us?
I just want to say thank you, all of you. I feel really humbled to be a part of all of this, and it feels really precious and beautiful. And thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, all of you. You've been so wonderful to me, and so embracing and inclusive. Thank you. I love you, and I appreciate you.
Oh, love you too.
Love you too, Nicole, and Lauren, and Jan, and Cynthia, and Regina.
Your last words to close with. It's up. You're up, Eileen.
I just love all you guys, and I'm a big lover too of life and animals and plants and rocks and everything. But more so the people I connect with, like here this week. I feel extremely emotional. And Kimberly Lynn Hansen too. I have a real connection, and it was instant. So thank you, all of you guys, for being here and sharing so openly and so deeply your most personal, true selves.
Thank you. You've just added so much. I can't even describe it. It's beyond words. So I'm just going to, you guys can stick around. You can stay right where you are. You can leave if you want, but I'm going to just close out the session for today. We have one more thing coming. So if you're watching this live stream, don't go away, because I believe we'll be seeing that 7-minute Mandela montage that we were talking about. We mentioned some of the beautiful video clips that are part of it. We mentioned several of them. But I'd like to start by thanking our sponsors for this event, which are very special and important to us. Conscious Life News, Dream Vision 7 Radio Network, the Ripon Common Sense Radio. I don't say it quite like the Dark Wolf, but you know what I mean. Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks, and The Kingdom of Nye with Heather Wade. And I also want to remind everyone tonight, if you haven't tried it, definitely sign on to the thetastream.app and give it a try. See if you can get into that love zone. Try to high vibe it and see what scores you get on the 60-second trial. It only takes 60 seconds. It's not very long. Or you can try one of the intuition training exercises. I tried them a couple days ago, and they're fun. And there are cash prizes. So this is the only event I know of that's totally free, and it's giving things away. So we're giving books away, such as Eileen and Shane's book, one of my books, and then, of course, these cash prizes. And we'll have the winners announced on Friday, so you've got tonight and one more day after. Which brings us to tomorrow's schedule. Tomorrow, we've got a wonderful presentation by Eva Nye. We'll also have a presentation by Sean Bond, and then we'll have our panel discussion. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But until next time, I love to just always ask, how good can it get? So I can't help it. I'm just going to say, how good can things get for all of us in all of our communities, wherever we may be, with all the issues that we think are facing us? Let's just bring a little extra love, a little bit extra open-mindedness and open-heartedness, like we saw today at the first IMEC, The View. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So that means it's a lot like the future affecting the present and the present affecting the past. When we look at alternate histories, what does this sound like? Sounds a lot to me like the Mandela effect.
And I bring the Mandela effect up because I know a lot of our viewers have come to this through that experience. And it is bigger than the Mandela effect. We understand that. But it's kind of our wake-up moment.
Things are changing at a rapid pace. To think that this Mandela effect is only limited to words and movies, you really don't have a clear understanding of what's going on.
And the most arresting thing, if you haven't already noticed, is her hand is not even there. Her hand is missing. So, is this like Back to the Future gone wild or what? I don't know.
Wait a second. This is a second rose?
It's the same one.
Oh, it's the same one.
How do you spell it? All four of them in unison said H-A-A-S.
Do you remember Ed McMahon delivering checks to people's houses?
Yeah, the clearinghouse sweepstakes.
Yeah, he doesn't do it anymore, dude. He doesn't work for them anymore.
You're wrong.
He's never done it before, ever.
Melinda Iverson in here. And the Mandela effect can manifest in so many ways, like my earring dropping in. How joyful can life get?
I would always see our dog waddling around, and then I would go to look, and she wasn't there. I was seeing her in a quantum superposition.
Yes, I believe in Mandela effect. Thank you, Cynthia. This is Dr. Pallavi from India. Well, I am a magician, an author, a physiotherapist, and a healer. Thank you.
And it may be as simple as tuning a dial on a radio station now and tuning into the frequency that you would like to move forward into.
The Mandela effect, for me, is something, I can't describe it with words. When I first came across one that actually hit home, zinged me in my heart.
Hi, my name's Mark Muchluckner, and I was Mandela affected back in 2017. So I wrote a book about it titled Spiritual Awakening Using the Mandela Effect. So rather than letting the Mandela effect use you, use the Mandela effect for your own spiritual development. That's it. Namaste.
Welcome to the quantum age, where believing is seeing.
Be a blank slate for divinity to create.
Raising our love vibrations of billions of hearts. Oh, it's beautiful.
Memories, they all just faded away. Looked in their eyes, they were all in the days. All alone, shifted to this place. Sun is white, but the clouds are gray.
Everything that's happened in this Mandela effect, it's all like people have been taken back from the dead. We have new species, we have new logos, we have new things. Like, how is that evil? If anything, I think God's just showing off. It's not the end of the world.
There are no right or wrong answers, just the current and alternate ones. Your answers go into a pool, which helps with the study of the Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect is like a crime scene we stumbled upon, and we want to know what happened. I researched these changes to piece back together the puzzle, and that puzzle is our memories of the past.
You are talking to Rock and Roll Robert Zumoff. Oh wait, I'm Patrick Roberts from our new timeline.
This ended up being, one of the best moments of my life, as far as the ME.
All I know reasonably well is airplanes. So what's this video about? Well, that's what we're going to see now.
Does this look right to you?
Yep.
Because I used to not have the E. Yes. When I was in the store, I was like, that doesn't look right, but I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, I'm probably just remembering it wrong.
I was just trying to tell a good friend tonight. Finally, came out of the closet, so to speak, about being a Mandela Effect Bible changes enthusiast.
And as much as everything doesn't exist or is just an illusion, I also have felt ever since I was a child that everything is alive.
I know that famous scripture, and I've come across it, and it's not there. And it's never been there in this reality.
Ever since that initial shock wore off, it's been incredible. It's been great. The things that I've been learning and looking into, and paths I've been taking down, and people I've met some incredible people throughout this whole thing that I never would have met. So it's just been a really great experience for me.
Well, I just wanted to do a video on the Mandela effect. Apparently Paul Hogan no longer says throw another shrimp on the Barbie. He slips the shrimp on the Barbie now.
I knew that the universe is not out there, that I am the universe. So I do have all the power. So do you.
And one of the things the research is confirming is that there is no one set solid objective reality out there, and that what we are beyond physical bodies is pure energy.
I've learned that we are an actor playing as multiple characters on multiple stages, no matter which play we're in. I love